In the heart of Etoro, a peaceful village surrounded by wide green fields and tall swaying palm trees, lived a young woman named Nia. She was known across the land for her graceful dancing, her sparkling beauty, and most of all, her extravagant way of life. Every morning, Nia would step out of her family's small mud brick house, dressed in brightly colored robes made from fine silks. Her arms jingled with golden bangles, and her hair was braided tightly, decorated with colorful beads that clicked softly as she walked. The people of Etoro admired her and often wondered, where does she get such wealth? Her father was a simple yam farmer, and her mother wove baskets and mats to sell at the village market. They lived humbly, yet Nia shone like royalty. Children whispered, maybe she married a prince. Women guessed, perhaps a rich merchant fell in love with her. Men admired her from afar, dreaming of gaining her attention. But no one dared ask Nia directly. She moved through the village with such confidence and charm that no one could imagine questioning her. The truth, however, was dark. Nia had no prince. No rich merchant. No fortune of her own. What the villagers didn't know was that Nia was a thief, a clever one. It began with small things. A silver bracelet left on a merchant's table. A few coins from a traveler's unattended pouch. She would smile sweetly, engage in light conversation, and while their eyes were on her face, her fingers would slip valuables into her bag. No one ever suspected her. Her beauty was her shield, her innocent eyes hiding a dangerous secret. As time passed, her greed grew. The thrill of taking what wasn't hers filled her with a strange power. She no longer cared about right or wrong. All that mattered was the admiration, the envy, the feeling of being above everyone else. With every stolen jewel, every fancy robe, her pride swelled. She walked through Etoro as if she were queen of the village. No one dared question her, until one day, a new face arrived. A wealthy merchant named Kojo came to Etoro, his caravan of goods dazzling the villagers. His stall was filled with treasures, gold coins, silk from faraway lands, rare spices, and jewels that glowed under the sun. His eyes were sharp, and his face bore no smile. People said he was ruthless in business, a man who trusted no one. When Nia saw his stall, her eyes widened. This was her chance. If she could steal from Kojo, she would be set for life. She could leave Etoro, live in a great city, and never worry about money again. That evening, she approached Kojo's stall, her finest robe shimmering in the golden light. She wore a necklace she had stolen weeks ago, acting like a noblewoman. "You have such fine goods, sir," she said with a soft smile, letting her fingers trace the edge of a silk cloth. "I have never seen such riches before." Kojo didn't smile. He looked at her with piercing eyes, ones that seemed to see through her soul. "These are not for everyone," he said slowly. "Only those who understand their true value can afford them." Nia's heart beat faster. She had met many merchants before, but Kojo felt different, dangerous. Still, she played her part, laughing gently, admiring the goods, moving closer to a small wooden box filled with gold coins. Kojo turned to speak to another customer, and Nia's fingers crept toward the box. Her hands were quick, years of stealing making her bold. But before she could grab a single coin, a hand like iron clamped down on her wrist. Kojo turned slowly, his dark eyes locking onto hers. "You think you're clever?" he asked, his voice low and cold. "You think I haven't seen your kind before?" Nia tried to pull away, her voice shaking. "Please, I didn't mean." "Enough," Kojo snapped, pulling her close. "You've stolen before. I can see it in your eyes. Shall we ask the village what they think of their precious dancer?" Nia's heart sank. If the villagers knew, her life would be over. Her family would face shame. Her name would be ruined. Kojo leaned in, whispering in her ear, "Meet me tonight. At your home." or I will tell them all. He released her wrist and walked away, leaving Nia frozen in fear. As the sun set, a cold wind blew through Etoro, but Nia didn't feel it. Her mind raced, her hands trembling. For the first time, she had been caught. And Kojo's revenge was only just beginning. As darkness fell over the village of Etoro, the usual sounds of laughter and song were absent from Nia's home. She sat alone, staring at the flickering oil lamp, its flame dancing like the fear in her heart. Kojo's words echoed in her mind. "Meet me tonight. At your home. Or I will tell them all." Her hands trembled. She had always controlled every situation, every theft, every conversation. But now, someone else had the power. And he was not a man known for mercy. Outside, the wind rustled the palm leaves, and the night creatures sang their eerie songs. But inside Nia's small house, silence pressed down on her like a heavy stone. A knock shattered the quiet. She froze. Her breath caught in her throat. Knock. Knock. Slowly, she rose, her feet like stones. She opened the door to find Kojo standing tall, his face calm, unreadable. He stepped inside without a word, closing the door behind him. Nia's heart pounded as he looked around the humble home. No gold. No silk. Just a small wooden bed, a clay stove, and a few woven mats. The truth of her life, one she had hidden so carefully, was now laid bare before him. Kojo turned to her. "You live simply," he said, ice cold. "Yet you parade through the village dressed like a queen. Tell me, how many people have you stolen from to play your little game?" Nia swallowed hard. "Please. I never meant to hurt anyone. Stop," Kojo snapped, his voice sharp. "You're not sorry. You're only scared." Nia looked down, ashamed and cornered. "You tried to rob me," Kojo continued. "Most men would hand you to the elders. But I am not most men." She looked up, hope flickering in her eyes. "Please, what do you want?" she whispered. Kojo stepped closer, the air between them heavy. "You owe me," he said simply. "And I will take what I am owed." Nia's stomach turned. She understood what he meant, but her lips could not form a protest. Fear gripped her throat like a hand. Kojo leaned in, his voice low. "You will serve me, Nia. You will come to my estate. Do as I say. Or I will tell the village who you really are." Her knees felt weak. If the village knew, her parents would be shamed, their names cursed. Children would mock her in the streets. She had no choice. I will come," she said, barely a whisper. Kojo's eyes glinted, victorious. Without another word, he turned and left, leaving Nia trembling, trapped by her own actions. Nia walked through the village as if in a dream. Her robes were bright, her jewelry shining, but inside, she felt hollow. The villagers greeted her, smiling, waving, unaware that beneath the silk and gold was a girl held captive by fear. At Kojo's estate, a large compound at the edge of the village, she arrived at sunset. Guards watched her with interest, but said nothing. Kojo waited in the courtyard, dressed in rich fabrics, a cup of palm wine in his hand. "You're here," he said simply. She nodded. "Good. You will clean. You will serve. And when I call, you will come to me. Say nothing. Do what I ask. That is your punishment." Nia's heart sank. She had once stolen from others, now she was stolen herself, a prisoner of her own greed. Each morning, Nia scrubbed floors, cooked meals, and served Kojo's guests, who laughed and praised their host, never knowing the dancer they admired was now his servant. At night, Kojo summoned her, not with kindness, but with commands. His dominance crushed her spirit. He never hit her, never shouted, but the quiet control, the cold gaze, it was worse than any whip. Each day, Nia's pride shattered further. The girl who once danced freely, who was admired by all, now moved like a shadow, her smile gone, her spark dimmed. She looked at herself in the mirror one night, eyes empty, a stranger staring back. "What have I become?" she whispered. But deep inside, a flame still burned, small, weak, but alive. Kojo thought he had broken her. He was wrong. The sun rose over Etoro village, but for Nia, the light meant nothing. Days had blurred into nights. Joy had vanished. All that remained was the cold, suffocating presence of Kojo's control. In the eyes of the villagers, Nia still walked tall, dressed in fine robes, golden bracelets jingling on her arms. But only she knew that every sparkle, every piece of gold, was just another shackle. A reminder that she no longer owned her life. Kojo didn't raise his hand against her. He didn't need to. His words were weapons, sharp and precise. "You owe me," he would say, his voice always calm. "You tried to take what was mine. Now you belong to me." Nia obeyed every order. She swept floors, served guests, fetched water from the well with bare feet and tired arms. But the worst came at night, when Kojo's cold voice would summon her. "Nia, come." Her heart would sink. Her body would go numb. She would walk the long hall to his room, her legs heavy, her spirit weaker each time. There, Kojo would take what he wanted. Not with love. Not with passion. Only power. He treated her like an object, a thing to use, a trophy to show that no one could steal from him without paying the price. After each night, Nia would lie awake, staring at the thatched roof, her body aching, her soul screaming. She felt abandoned by the ancestors, betrayed by her own choices. Each morning, she would wash her face, braid her hair, and pretend. Pretend that she was fine. Pretend that she was still the confident, admired dancer everyone loved. But the mirror did not lie. Her eyes, once full of life, were now dull and tired. Her smile, once bright, was faded and forced. She began to avoid the village square, afraid someone might see through her mask. Afraid they would discover the prison she lived in. One day, while fetching water from the well inside Kojo's compound, Nia met Moyo, an old maid with wrinkled hands and gentle eyes. "You are Nia," Moyo said softly, handing her a gourd. "Yes," Nia whispered, barely lifting her eyes. "I know your pain," Moyo said, her voice full of warmth. "I too was once young and foolish. I chased wealth and attention. And I too paid the price." Nia looked at her, tears burning her eyes. You understand?" Moyo nodded. "You think you are alone. But you are not. Many have fallen for the lies of riches. But listen, child. No one can own you unless you let them. You may have lost your way, but your spirit is not broken. Not yet." Those words echoed in Nia's heart. Her spirit is not broken. Not yet. For the first time in weeks, she felt a flicker of hope that night. As Kojo summoned her again, Nia's body obeyed, but her mind began to fight back. She stared at the ceiling, hearing his voice, feeling his weight, but inside her, something had changed. She was no longer empty. She was hungry. Each demand, each cruel command, now felt like a spark against dry grass. Her heart burned with a quiet fury. "He thinks he controls me," she thought. "But he cannot kill who I am. Not forever." Nia remembered the girl she used to be, the one who danced freely in the square, who laughed with friends, who dreamed of love and happiness. That girl had chased admiration and stolen wealth, thinking it would bring her respect. Now, she had everything she wanted: gold, silk, status. But she felt like nothing. Her pride had led her into this cage. But it was Kojo's greed for power that locked the door. One night, standing in front of the mirror, Nia touched her face, her eyes filling with tears. I am not his. I will not be his. I will find a way. As the moon rose high, casting silver light over Etoro, Nia knew that the time of silence was ending. Kojo believed he had broken her. But Nia was still alive. And soon, the village would know the truth. The days dragged on at Kojo's estate, each one a mirror of the last. The same tasks. The same demands. The same fear. But inside Nia's heart, something had begun to change. She was no longer numb. She was awake. Each morning, she still fetched water, still cooked and cleaned, but her eyes were alert, and her mind was sharp. She studied the estate, the guards, the gates, the paths. She was looking for a way out. One evening, as the sun dipped low and the sky turned gold, Moyo approached Nia at the well. You seem different, the old woman said, her voice soft. Nia nodded. I can't live like this anymore. Moyo smiled, lines deepening around her eyes. Then don't. The chains that bind you are not just his hands, they are your fear. Nia whispered, he said if I defy him, he'll shame me before the village. Moyo looked into her eyes. And what if you tell them first? What if you speak the truth before he does? Truth, child, is a powerful weapon, sharper than any blade. Nia stared at Moyo, her heart pounding. Could it be that simple? That night, while Kojo was away attending a merchant's feast, Nia walked the estate grounds. The guards were fewer, distracted by drink and music. The back gate, usually locked, had been left slightly open for servants to come and go. Her heart raced. Her hands trembled. But she knew this was the moment. She returned to her small room and packed nothing. She didn't need silk. She didn't need gold. All she needed now was freedom. As she stepped into the night, Moyo appeared, holding a small woven pouch. Take this, she said, pressing it into Nia's hands. Nia opened it to find her mother's old necklace, one she had sold long ago to feed her hunger for riches. How? Nia gasped. I bought it back from the market. Not all treasures are lost forever, Moyo said, tears in her eyes. Now go. Speak your truth. Reclaim your life. Nia ran through the dark paths, the village lights flickering in the distance. Her breath was heavy, but her steps were sure. When she reached Itoro's village square, the sun had just begun to rise, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. The villagers were gathering, preparing for market day, unaware of the storm about to strike. Nia stepped into the center of the square, lifted her head, and called out, her voice clear and strong. People of Itoro, I have lied to you. I have stolen from you. I have worn stolen jewels and walked in false pride. I have lived a life of greed and shame. Gasps filled the air. Whispers turned to murmurs. Nia continued, tears streaming down her cheeks. But I have suffered. At the hands of a man who caught me and chose revenge over justice. He used me. Broke me. And I come before you not to ask for forgiveness, but to tell you the truth. The square fell silent. Kojo arrived moments later, storming into the crowd, his face twisted in rage. Lies, he shouted. She's trying to shame me. She is a thief. A liar. But before he could say more, Moyo stepped forward, her voice as calm as ever. I saw it all. I witnessed what you did to her. You are the liar, Kojo. You are the shame of this village. The village elders stepped in, their faces grim. You will answer for this, one said. Kojo looked around, realizing the eyes that once admired him now burned with disgust. He tried to speak, but no one listened. The elders declared, you, Kojo, are banished from Itoro. Never return. As Kojo was driven away, Nia stood still, trembling, not from fear, but from relief. The truth had set her free. She knew the road ahead would be hard. Trust was broken. Her name was stained. But now, she could begin again, with honesty, humility, and peace. The villagers, once deceived, now saw the girl behind the goad, a girl who had fallen but found the courage to rise. The sun climbed higher over Itoro, shining down on a village still gripped by shock and silence. In the heart of the square, Nia stood tall, though her robes were now simple, her eyes filled with both fear and determination. She had laid everything bare, her thefts, her lies, and the humiliation she suffered at Kojo's hands. The villagers, who once whispered about her beauty and wealth, now stood with wide eyes and open mouths, trying to understand the depth of her confession. Some elders shook their heads in anger. How could you deceive us, Nia? You were a daughter of this land, and you brought shame. Others, especially the women and young girls, stared at her with a strange mix of sorrow and respect. She was trapped, one whispered. She is brave to speak, said another. Nia bowed her head, accepting their judgment. I do not ask you to forgive me. Only to see me for what I am now, not the girl of gold and silk, but the woman who dares to tell the truth. At the edge of the crowd, Kojo stood alone, his face pale with fury. He tried to speak again, to twist the story. She's lying, he roared. She's trying to destroy me because I caught her stealing. But then, Moyo stepped forward once more. She speaks the truth, the old woman said firmly. I saw her pain. I saw the fear in her eyes every night. Kojo treated her as his possession, not as a human being. The village elders gathered, their faces grim. You, Kojo, the chief elder spoke, brought harm to our daughter in the name of revenge. You chose cruelty over justice. There is no place for men like you in Itoro. With one unified voice, the elders declared. You are banished. Leave this village. Never return. The villagers parted as Kojo was led away, Shim clinging to him like a second skin. His riches, his power, meant nothing now. As he disappeared into the distant hills, Nia felt a weight lift from her chest. She was no longer under his shadow. In the days that followed, Nia returned to her family's home. Her parents embraced her with tears. We were blind, her mother wept. We should have seen your pain, said her father. Nia helped in the fields, carried water, and wove cloth for the market, no longer adorned in silk, but in simple robes, her head held high. She worked hard, not to gain wealth, but to rebuild the trust she had lost. Some villagers avoided her. Others watched in silence. But slowly, a few came forward, a child offering a flower, an elder offering a prayer. The healing had begun. One evening, Moyo visited Nia, carrying a small basket of fruit. You walked through fire and came out stronger, she said with a smile. Now you must lead others away from the same flames. Nia nodded, understanding the deeper meaning. She had been broken, but not defeated. Now, she had a voice, and a story, that could guide others. One night, sitting under the moonlight, Nia made a vow to herself. I will never again chase the glitter of false wealth. I will walk with truth, even if the path is hard. Her eyes lifted to the stars, and for the first time in many moons, she felt free. Weeks passed in Itoro, and life slowly returned to its usual rhythm. The market buzzed with voices, the fields waved under the sun, and drums echoed in the evenings. But for Nia, every day was a step on a long road, the road of redemption. She had fallen low. She had stood before her people in shame, admitting her faults. Now she was determined to rise again, not through gold or beauty, but through honesty and hard work. Each morning, Nia rose with the sun. Gone were the silks and jewels. She now wore simple robes, her hair braided plainly. She joined her father in the fields, planting yams and cassava, her hands stained with earth, her back aching from labor, but her heart peaceful. At the market, she sat beside her mother, weaving colorful mats and baskets. Some villagers passed by with cold eyes. Others watched her quietly, waiting to see if her change was real. She never begged for forgiveness. She didn't make excuses. She let her actions speak. One afternoon, while weaving under a tree, two young girls approached her. They hesitated, eyes wide. "Auntie Nia," one whispered, "can you teach us how to braid hair like yours?" Nia smiled softly, tears threatening to fall. "Yes, come sit. I will teach you." As she braided their hair, laughter bubbled from the girls. The sound felt like sunlight warming her heart. She realized that respect earned through truth was far sweeter than admiration built on lies. Soon, others began to seek her. Women asked for advice, young men listened to her tales about the dangers of greed, and elders nodded as she spoke during village gatherings. One night, at a fireside circle, Nia shared her story openly, the pride, the theft, the punishment, and the path to healing. Her voice was calm but strong. "I thought wealth would make me powerful. But it made me a prisoner. True freedom is living without shame, with your head high and heart clean." The crowd was silent, moved. One elder stood and said, "You have suffered. But you have also grown. Let your story guide our children, so they do not fall as you did." Far away, in the dusty roads beyond Etoro, Kojo wandered alone. He had tried to settle in another village, but his reputation followed him. Merchants avoided him. Villagers spat at him. His gold could not buy peace, only fear. One night, in a lonely camp under the stars, Kojo sat by a fire, staring at his hands. "They all feared me, but none respected me," he whispered. He had power. But in the end, he had lost everything, even himself. Back in Etoro, the time came for the Festival of Spirits, a celebration of life, ancestors, and renewal. Dancers, drummers, and villagers filled the square with color and sound. Nia was invited to perform, not as the girl of riches, but as the woman of strength and truth. She stepped into the center, dressed in a robe she had woven herself, decorated with beads from her childhood. As the drums beat, she moved with grace, not to impress, but to express. Her dance told her story of rising, falling, and rising again. Tears filled the eyes of many, for they did not see a thief or a liar. They saw Nia, the woman who had found her way home. The Festival of Spirits filled the village of Etoro with music, color, and joy. Fires burned bright, casting golden light on the faces of the villagers. Drums echoed through the air, while voices sang songs of ancestors, courage, and rebirth. In the heart of it all stood Nia. No longer wrapped in stolen gold or silks, she wore a robe woven by her own hands, plain, yet beautiful, with patterns that told her story. When she stepped into the circle of dancers, the drum slowed. All eyes turned to her, not with envy or suspicion, but with respect. As the beat began, Nia danced, not to show off, not to steal attention, but to share her truth. Each step told a part of her journey. The rise of pride. The fall into shame. The chains of fear. And finally, the freedom found in truth and humility. The crowd watched in silence, moved by every motion. Some elders nodded solemnly. Mothers wept quietly. Children stared with wide eyes, seeing not just a dancer, but a heroine who had faced the storm and survived. When the drums stopped, the village erupted in applause, not for the beauty of the dance, but for the courage of the woman behind it. From that day forward, Nia's life was different. She no longer sought admiration. Instead, she became a teacher, a guide, sharing her story with young girls and boys, teaching them about the dangers of greed, the value of truth, and the power of forgiveness. Her home became a place where people came not for riches, but for wisdom. One morning, a traveler came to the village, a young girl wearing a necklace that once belonged to Nia's mother. The girl explained, "An old woman at a distant market gave it to me and said, 'Return this to where it belongs.' She said it was part of a story that must be told." Nia's eyes filled with tears. Moyo, the kind maid, had gone on a journey, but her final act was a gift of remembrance. Nia took the necklace, holding it close. "I once lost myself for this," she said softly. "Now I wear it, not for show, but to remember who I am." Years passed. Nia's story spread to nearby villages, becoming a folktale of its own. People spoke of the dancer who had once been trapped by greed, but who had found freedom in truth. Children recited her story by firesides. Elders used it as a lesson in village councils. And Nia? She danced still, but only for the joy of movement, for the love of her people, and to honor the path that shaped her into the woman she had become. Greed may bring gold, but truth brings peace. Pride may win applause, but humility wins hearts. True wealth is not in what you wear or own, but in how you live, love, and honor your name.